Does anybody still need a real estate agent in the world today? I mean, we have technology, right? You can just buy things on Amazon. Well, there's a reason that real estate is not as simple as clicking on your app. The biggest reason that it's not an app purchase, real estate is not a commodity item. For everybody out there in the interwebs, in the comment sections of everything that likes to think real estate is so easy, you can just click and buy it. That does happen on occasion. All of us that are professionals in real estate will attest we've seen an easy transaction that one time. It's very much a unicorn, but we've all seen one. The reason real estate can't be commoditized though, and the reason you don't pick it out on an app is because every house is different. You know what makes them different? It's not the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the square footage. It's not even the location, which does add a factor in that's really hard to quantify. It's the human factor, y'all. I mean, when I look at the house I'm in, my house, my bookshelves, I picked out these bookshelves. I renovated this house. I have this emotional attachment to my house because this is where I eat with my parents on Sundays, and it's where my kids got on the school bus, and it's where I have my chickens and my gardens, and I have an emotional attachment to this house. So when I go to sell it, that is one of the really hard things to quantify because I've got to detach from this asset in order to sell it. That's one of the things a real estate agent does for you, and one of the reasons we do still matter to a lot of people. Now, you know what other humans are involved? The ones buying it who fell in love, and now there's an internal squabble in the family over who wants it more and who wanted which house and which features everybody wants. And then they have an agent in a perfect world. Of course, that's what the government wants to take away from you, friends. They also have a lender and an underwriter and an appraiser. Then they're going to have a home inspector and a surveyor. And then I, the emotional human who owns it, through my agent, am going to have to deal with all of these other humans and all of their opinions. And that's the biggest reason you need an agent. We absorb that emotion so that you can get back to the logical space and make the best decision for you and your family, whatever configuration that looks like. And when I talk about that configuration, it's why we have different emotional needs when you are single, thinking about forming a family one day, than when you are an empty nester who's considering downsizing, than when you're the kids who are dealing with mom and dad's house after they've moved on to their great reward. All of those are different emotional situations. The house underneath might be the same house, but each emotion leads through a different process. That's one of the reasons you want a real estate agent. Now, let's consider all of the arguments that have come up since we've seen the really big onslaught of conversation about real estate in the mainstream media and in social media since the lawsuits and the proposed settlements. Biggest argument is I don't need an agent anymore. Okay, that's fair. Some of y'all never did. In fact, there's people that have chosen not to work with me, and I've chosen not to work with them because they didn't want to pay my professional fee. That's fine. Those are not my people. I've also walked into stores and thought about purchasing things that I did not purchase because it did not make sense for me at that time. That's always been the case in real estate. In fact, we talk about the people who sell by themselves. We call them FSBOs, and that's not an aggressive or ugly term, but for you in the public that don't know, that just means for sale by owner. That's all the little signs you find at Lowe's and Home Depot and your local hardware store, and we know you're trying to do it on your own. Those of us in the business also know that over 90% of for sale by owners eventually throw their hands up in frustration and hire a real estate professional because it's more than they thought they were getting into. That's the other big reason you do want a real estate agent when you're thinking about conducting real estate. It's a bigger deal than clicking on an app. In fact, you can go to a real estate app and put in your search criteria, and you can click. And even if you say, I want to buy this, add to cart. Okay, well, what next? That's the other thing an agent does in that moment of purchase is what next? In the moment of sale is what next? And if you ask me before you go to buy and before you go to sell, I have to say, well, Pumpkin, I don't know what's next, because every house, in addition to having all those humans and all those emotional pieces, has things going on, because houses are living, breathing things. So when I say living and breathing, that's a perfect world, because you're going through 4 seasons, at least in North Carolina you are, and each of those seasons has heating and cooling, and we have airflow. We have people in the house, which means we might have fungal growth. We might have structural foundational settling issues. And if you say, but Lee Brown, I can call my own inspector, I can handle that myself. Yes, you can. All right, so which home inspector are you going to know to call? That's why I made a little video about the home inspection process. There's people out there that are excellent. There's people out there that are not excellent. And then you might think you would just bring your old Uncle Bob to come to the house and look at it with you with his eagle eye. Well, if Uncle Bob does not have an inspector's license, does he know what the current things are to look for, what's happening in that space? Because that is a space that is always moving and changing, just like real estate markets do. So yes, you can handle those things yourself, but it tends to be your real estate professional that knows the real estate inspection professionals too, because we work with each other all the time, which is another one of the reasons you do want a real estate agent. In fact, I'm just going to take a little aside here and say that this is one of the reasons this conversation about real estate is really fragmented as we look at these proposed settlements and this really faulty lawsuit and the really terrible outcomes that are being proposed by all of these government entities. It's because real estate, by its nature, is an infrequent purchase. The average American consumer is going to conduct a real estate transaction 3, maybe 4 times in their lifetime if they're able to get on the point A of that transaction lifespan where they're able to get into their first house. Now, I know that's a big if for some people because you may live in a market that's not affordable. You may not know how to get started because you've heard some of the myths that say you need 20% down, which isn't true, but often it's the real estate professional that helps people get onto that train in the first place so that over the next 40 years, they can conduct real estate 3 or 4 times. Of course, if you're an investor, you don't have to at me and tell me that you do real estate every day. That's good. Congratulations. Good job. I'm talking about the normal person out there who doesn't want to go through moving, doesn't want to go through ripping up life by the roots, even if you're in the same area. I live in the same county I grew up in. Every time I've changed houses, it is this wildly uprooting feeling. And I hadn't even changed time zones or states, and I still live where people understand my accent and where I come from. It's so hard. It's so difficult. It's such a pain, and takes your emotions right here, which goes back to point number 1. It's the emotional piece. But part of that emotion comes in not just because of every human involved, but because it's infrequent. So for all of my real estate professionals out there who are wondering why the public is not causing more of an uproar over the erosion of private property rights, over the actual attack on real estate, the attack on home ownership that's coming from the highest levels of the administration, it's because for most of your neighbors, it's just not that frequent of a problem. Now, we do know there are people out there that have things to say about all of this, whether it's frequent or infrequent. No matter who's involved in the decision making about the settlement, they've got things to say about agents and things to say about real estate. I just question how many of them have actually gone through the home ownership process with a realtor within the last 12 to 24 months. Because frankly, that infrequency leads to a lack of connection to what's happening in the markets. I'll use the COVID era as an example because starting with the lockdowns in March of 2020, our real estate markets went to complete shutdown for a hot minute while everybody was in, oh my gosh, what next mode. In some states, realtors weren't allowed to practice. The state of Pennsylvania had their agents on lockdown, so they weren't essential service. So the agents didn't know what to do. There go showings and there go listings. State of New York put in that state of emergency and told agents you were not essential, so they weren't even allowed to call their past clients if these agents were following the instructions from the highest levels of government in New York. Now, as you're remembering how stupid that time was, I'm with you on that. But about a month after those lockdowns started, we had all the at-home people who were in the foxhole with their spouses and this kids doing virtual school, I should say doing virtual school because that destroyed our kids. But when you look at what happened, people said, I got to do real estate. I either need to get out of my parents' basement finally, or I need a bonus room. I need a home office. Hey, let's get a pool. Hey, if we're going to remote work, we may as well go where we want to go. And people did real estate in numbers that none of us had ever seen. I'm a 24-year realtor. That was actually going to be my big 20th anniversary celebration in 2020, and it just never got off the ground really because we were trying to manage the markets. And when I say manage the markets, we went from nobody did anything in March, April, the fire hose starts, and then it's Katie bar the door. And you're looking at multiple offers, the likes of which none of us had ever seen. So why would you need a real estate agent when the markets were white hot in 2020, 2021, and part of 2022? Well, it's because if you're a seller, even if you were buy owner, because I got some of these phone calls, they stick a sign in the yard and here come all these offers. And then they say, what next? Well, the buyers that were trying to compete did not know, because in most states it's a blind bidding process unless you have guidelines from your state general statutes that allow you to do it differently. If your seller gives you permission, you had this just big, giant number of offers because the demand was so big. And if you're a buyer, how do you stick out in a package of 57 offers? And that became the moment of real estate professionals helping their clients guide through. Now let's look at the 2024 markets. I'm recording this, of course, in spring of 2024. We don't know which house is going to be multiple offers and which one's not. We don't know which one's going to sell in 5 minutes and which one's going to take 3 weeks. So again, back to why you want a real estate professional is because market conditions are fluid. And for you who are looking to purchase real estate, most of you are gainfully employed. Your time is occupied with work. And when you're not occupied with work, you're looking at Lee Brown on YouTube, hey, what's up? Or you're looking at Netflix and Hulu. Maybe you're going for a run, or you're having a drink at the local brewery with your friends. You're not living, eating, sleeping, breathing real estate like real estate professionals are, which is why you call on a real estate agent. So long story short, yes, you still need an agent most of the time. Some of you don't. That's okay. But let's talk about some of those scenarios very briefly about why you want a real estate agent. Why do you want an agent when you're buying for the first time? Well, I will tell you the biggest reason is we can connect you to a local professional mortgage lender if you're getting a mortgage that can show you the buffet of options. They'll talk to you about down payment assistance. They'll say, hey, we've got North Carolina housing. That's $15,000 in down payment assistance. They'll talk to you about buying a duplex. How do you do that under FHA guidelines? What do you do with a VA loan right now? We want to help you figure out every pathway so that you can figure out which one you belong on. And then we go out and find you a property, and then we start checking off all the boxes, because spoiler alert, finding the property is the easiest part right now. The hard part is locking it down. So we prepare you before you go hunting so that we can lock it down. Now, if you're the person who's in category number 2 and you're trying to move up in the world, that means you are in a logistics hotspot of, okay, I need to sell this one, which means I need to get it staged and upgraded and probably replace some things and paint some things and make it really cute. And people live here, because there's no mistaking about it. When you're selling, the hardest thing in the world is showings, which was the one good thing about COVID. We had a lot of virtual showings. Well, now people are back to wanting to go in houses. And if you're selling, you're letting strangers in and out of your house all day and all night. With an appointment, if you're using a realtor, we help guard some of the safety aspects on that. But it's still just so stressful. And at the same time, you want to go somewhere else. And we're trying to help you minimize the number of pods in your yard and how many addresses you're going to have. Most people want to sell, buy, move one time. That's really hard in a market which has restricted inventory. Your realtor helps you logistically plan that out so that it can make sense. It's also where experience comes in to be a very handy thing with your agent, because you really don't want to use a part-time agent if you're trying to manage multiple properties. Not that there aren't excellent agents that are just not in this full time, but it's hard for them to have the muscle memory to know exactly how to manage all of these things seamlessly. Now, there's another scenario where you do want a real estate agent, and that is managing downsizing. Now, let's go back to the beginning of this video again. That emotional aspect is on heightened alert with downsizers, because for our generation that's a step older than I am, I'm medium. And so I consider my parents and their friends to be medium plus, and in the medium plus pluses, most of them stay in a house much longer because people just didn't move as frequently in previous iterations of our society. So they're looking around a house, and it's not just 10 years worth of junk, it is 40 years worth of treasures. It is the album collection, it's all of the stuff that the kids made in school, and the kids are now grandparents themselves, and there's just stuff on stuff on stuff. And here's the wildest part of that. The kids don't want it anymore. I might be the last of the generation that says, give me your old cast off real wood furniture, bring it please. A lot of our younger folks now prefer to buy things at IKEA. I don't know why either, but they do. And they just don't want the old Ethan Allen furniture that's so heavy and so valuable. And the realtor actually helps downsizers figure out, what do I do with this? And then deal with the emotions around it. And why is that? Because we've seen it, we've heard it, and we help people process information. I'm not a therapist or a counselor, but I do a lot of listening. And I do a lot of, well, I've seen this outcome play out. I've seen this outcome play out. Now you're thinking about that downsizer. In addition to the stuff in the house, which causes a very interesting obstacle course to navigate, there's also this idea of you've had this wonderful yard for all these years. You've had your own gardens. You had a place for the dog to run in the backyard. And many of our downsizers are going to maintenance-free locations, whether it's a 55-plus neighborhood like Sun City or the product that Epcon is putting out. Niblock's got some beautiful properties. We love the options for the 55-plus crowd. They might also be going into a neighborhood that's step up, like here in Concord, we have Taylor Glen, where you can come in independent. And then as you need more care, it's right there on site. That's a big jump as well, to go from fully independent, in charge of everything, to accepting the idea that maybe, just maybe in the near future, someone's going to have to be there to assist you with all of those next steps. And did you know it's often your real estate professional who's right there with you on this journey? We just don't talk about it enough, friends. The fact that your realtor is here as a part of the process, and we're here before you call us, and we're here after you're done with your real estate transaction, because in addition to all of those physical pieces, all the transactional pieces, the emotional piece is not just all of the heightened sense during the transaction, it's the emotion that develops between real estate professional and client. Because one thing I will tell you is that of all the horror stories you're hearing about real estate people, it does not apply to all. There is a class of real estate professional, and it's the long-term ones usually. It's the top producers usually, who are skilled at rapport. They are skilled at listening. They're skilled at problem solving, and we don't go anywhere. So as you're thinking through the process and trying to decide what makes sense for you, let me just tell you, a good real estate professional, and again, it's not all, it's a good one, is there before you need them. They're there while you need them, and they're available after the transaction's over, no matter what your stage in life. If you go it alone, we do wish you the best, because we want to help you too. If you don't go it alone, you'll realize you never had to. Now, for more information about any of those stages or any of the stuff that's going on out there, click one of these links over here, hit the comments, or DM me.